Hello and welcome to another Vista tips and tricks video. In this video, we're going to be answering a couple of questions that I've seen pop up a lot recently. The first question is, if I have a show with multiple songs in it, is it better to program all of the songs into one big cue list, or is it better to split those songs up into multiple cue lists? The second question is, if I have multiple cue lists, so I have a cue list per song, what's the best way to transition between the end of one song into the beginning of another? And how can I set up my console so I have everything I need for each song every time? So in answer to the first question, unfortunately, it's one of those things. It's personal preference. Now, personally, I don't like to have one big list if I've got lots and lots of songs. I like to be able to split them up and do a cue list per song, mostly just because it's easier to manage. If I have 5 tracks, I will do one cue list per track, and that way, if I have to edit something in song 3, I can quickly just grab song 3, hit edit, make my changes, save and close, and I know only song 3 is affected. I don't have to worry about tracking over 100 or so cues. I can just focus on getting the changes I need in that one song and then closing it. But then the problem comes, how do I then stitch all of those songs back together when it comes to run the show? And this is what we're going to look at today. So one of the first things we can do to help with this problem of transitioning between cue lists is actually in the cue list itself. So if I open up cue list 1, you'll see that I've got a preset at the beginning of my list and a preset at the end of my list. Now, both of these cues are exactly the same as far as outputting to stage is concerned. I have my washes in a deep blue. Obviously, you can have whatever you want for your preset. It can even be a blackout. But by doing this and having it the same at the beginning and the same at the end across all of your lists, so every list has a cue at the end and a cue at the beginning that looks exactly the same as this, it means as I transition between each cue list, as far as what's going out onto stage is concerned, nothing changes. But obviously, underneath it all, I'm actually releasing a cue list and loading another one. This means that everything looks really, really smooth. Another bonus to this is by giving yourself a preset cue for every single song, you give yourself a cue for everything to mark in. So everything can mark in this first cue, ready for your song. So all of your lights are ready to come up in position, come up in the right color, come up in the right effect, etc. because you've given yourself this cue to do it in. As an example, in Q2 of this list, my spots come in a gobo. As you can see, I've marked them and I've told them to mark in this first cue. So as soon as I hit go on this preset, those spots are ready to come up. My first cue turns my washes red and puts them into a nice position. And then my second cue brings in those spots in their position, in the gobo, in the right zoom. And that's all because I've given myself a preset to do this. So there are multiple advantages of doing this method. If I release and close this, another nice thing to do is to have a preset that is dedicated to this look. So for my preset look, I've obviously chosen my washes to kind of tilt forwards and zoom out enough to cover my stage in a deep blue. By making this preset just affect my washes means that I actually don't even have to have my washes selected. If I tap this preset, it will select my washes and put them into that look for me. So this can be something that you can set up before you start, and you can recall it nice and quickly because this is the same look you're going to use all the time. So now we've covered the beginning and end of our cue list and created a cue to help us with our transition. We're going to have a look at the rest of our list and kind of how you would go about structuring it. So what kind of things you want to put in your main list versus some of the things you want to control manually over the top of your list. So typically in your main list, you want the big main looks for each point in the song that you are definitely going to hit. Now obviously, this is an extremely basic example, and as with anything to do with design, it's completely up to you what kind of stuff you put in your main list and what kind of stuff you want to busk live. And obviously how many cues you need for your song, whether it's very, very complicated or very, very simple. So this is more of just to give you an idea of how you can structure things and what kind of things you might want to put into your list and what kind of things you might want to leave to control manually. So for this example, I have my first cue, which is a basic kind of intro look for our song. Then we might have another cue for our verse. Then the next main point I'm going to hit is maybe the breakdown before the chorus. Another thing you've probably noticed is throughout this whole list, there is no front light. And that's because that's something that I like to control manually over the top on a fader. So for this look, I might want them to be more moody, so I'll bring my front light down. And then in the next cue for the chorus, I might want to bring my front light back up again. That's something that I like to balance manually as we go. The next cue comes out of the chorus, and we stop our effect. And then the last cue gives us kind of like a blinder ending before returning us to our preset again. So they're the main points that I want to hit in my song, so I've put them in the main cue list. Another nice thing about this is all of these transitions will be timed so they work really well with the flow of the music itself. So every time I hit go, I know the transition between one cue to the next will be exactly in time with the music on the stage, because that's how I've programmed it. Now the stuff I want to do manually over the top though will be things like bumps and blinders and strobes and flyouts and maybe like one-shot effect type things to go with particular bits of every song. And here is where kind of another problem creeps up, is how do we lay our desk out so we always have the right bumps and blinders and effects for each song, because each song is going to be different, so we're going to require different kind of manual busking buttons and faders for every song. And luckily Vista has a great way of managing this too. So in the next part of the video I'm going to show you how to set up your console to give you a nice layout per song with everything you need. So the next thing we're going to look at is how to lay out our console. Now typically when I'm doing this kind of one cue list per song style of programming, I also like to have one page of faders per song. And the reason for this is so I can have my main list on every page. So on page 1 I'll have song 1, on page 2 I'll have song 2, and so on. And then all of the buttons next to that list will be everything I need just for that list. So any kind of manual effects, any kind of bumps and strobes and blinders that are specifically for that track will be on those buttons. So every time I load in a new fader page, I know I have exactly what I need just for that song. This way I'm not having to put everything in the desk and try and fit it all on one page, and I don't have to rattle up and down lots of different pages looking for the one effect I need for this track. So I'm going to show you how I set this up. I usually have one fader dedicated to my main list, so I'm going to use this fader right on the end as my main list fader. And then next to that I'm going to split down all my playbacks, so I have the maximum amount of kind of buttons and faders available to me for all of my manual effects and cue lists, etc. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in what I want on every page. So things like my front of house, I want them to be on every page. I always want access to my front light. I'll always want access to my blinders, so that will go on as well. Other things you might always want to have access to are things like effects masters. So I'll put these on these faders. Obviously, you can set this up to be unique to whatever you need, but as an example, these are the kind of things that I'll kind of want on every single page. So now I've got that, I can now copy this page, go up, and then paste it. and I will paste it for every single song that I need. So I have 5 pages. They're all identical now. Now we can fill in all the things that we need that will be specific for each song. So on page 1, we'll drag our main cue list for song 1. On page 2, main list for song 2. Page 3, main list for song 3. Page 4, main list for song 4. And page 5, main list for song 5. Another advantage of this is because every single page is kind of structured the same, even though we're going to fill in all of these buttons with different effects every time, it means that you can kind of focus on learning these by muscle memory, which means you can look at the stage more than you need to look at your console. So for song 1, we are going to perhaps have this effect on this button, and maybe this effect on this button. One of these effects I might want to be a toggle. So here we can also add all of our different functions for our buttons. Song 2 is going to use this effect. And again, I'm going to make that a toggle. Song 3 is going to use this effect and this effect. Again, I'll make these ones toggles. Song 4 might not have anything at all, so we'll leave it blank. And then song 5 will have this one-shot effect. So now we have a page set up per song ready to go. So all we need to do now is find out a way of recalling these pages so that every time we need to go to a new song or make a transition, Vista does all the hard work for us. Okay, so now we've set up our pages. We have a page per song, we have a cue list per song, and on every page we have all of the bump buttons and busking and cue lists that we need for each song. So now all we need is a way to stitch it all together and navigate through our show. And to do this, we're going to use snapshots. So the type of snapshot we're going to create will be one that puts us in the right queue, in the right cue list, and also on the right page of our console. So to do this, we want to start at the beginning. Make sure you're on page 1 with your first track. Hit go to put you into the preset of your first track. Then hold down your control key or yellow modifier key. Click in your snapshot quick picker and then label this snapshot song 1. Now, the things we want to have checked is playback state and console workspace. Playback state will ensure that this cue list in this queue is playing back and all of the other song cue lists are not. And then console workspace will make sure that we're on the right page. So when we hit this snapshot, it brings all of this up so we're ready to go for this song. Hit OK, and that's saved. I'm now going to release that list. Go to page 2, hit go on song 2, puts us in preset for song 2, and then make a snapshot the same way. Label it song 2, make sure I've got playback state and console workspace checked, and hit OK. Release that. Go to song 3, hit go on song 3, make another snapshot, label it song 3, hit OK. Release it, go to song 4, play song 4, label this one, song 4, and hit OK. And then same again for our last one. Song 5, hit go on song 5, and make a snapshot for it. Now obviously, you do this for as many songs that you have. So if you have 15 songs, go ahead and make 15 snapshots in the same way. And now what we can do is if we go back to our first page, make sure everything is released. If we're running in order, when we get to the end of our first song, we want to be able to transition to our second song. So we simply put song 2's snapshot on song 1's page. And then when we finish song 1, we can then jump to song 2. Same with song 3. we put it on song 2's page, and then we keep going up. Song 4 will go on song 3's page. Song 5 will go on song 4 page, and then song 5 will be the last one that we use. So now I can kind of show you this in action. So we hit go on our first song to put us into preset. Audience are coming in, house lights come down. We hit go for our first main look. We bring up some front of house. Maybe this is when we busk in some of our things that we need for song 1. Maybe I've got some kind of like white shot bumps and things like that. Then we simply play through our song, adding in anything that we need over the top, maybe more front of house, less front of house, etc. We simply go through our song as we need to. And then when we get to the end of our song, big blinder finish. This will then go into our preset. We now hit our snapshot for song 2. As you can see, nothing has changed on stage, but cue list 1 for song 1 released, and cue list 2 for song 2 has fired. So we're now ready to go on song 2. So we can bring our house lights up, hit go, and now we're in song 2. And now we're on page 2, so we have everything we need for our second track. So I'll quickly just bump through this as if we're going through the show. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. We get to the end of song 2, blinder finish, back to our preset, house lights down maybe, and now we're ready to go to song 3. I hit my snapshot, song 3 is activated, song 2 is released, but nothing has changed on stage, and we're ready to go for the beginning of this track. And we have all of the bump buttons that we need for this track. We play through this main cue list. Get to the end. Finish this list. Go to our preset. We're ready for song 4. We hit a snapshot for song 4. As you can see, 3 releases, 4 starts, and so on and so on. So as you can see, this is a really quick and easy way of getting through all of your songs, making the transitions look nice and smooth. In fact, you can't even tell that you're going through different cue lists at all. Quickly finish our set, so we'll get to song 5. Big finish. Back to our preset. Song 4 releases. Song 5 starts, but obviously because all of the start and ending cues are exactly the same, nobody has noticed. And we go to the first cue of song 5. We have our one-shot effect for the beginning of this. And we can go through song 5 as we normally would. And finish, and the end. Bring up some blinders, everybody goes home. So there we go. That's how we can use some snapshots to navigate not only through our cue lists, but also to tell which cue list needs to be playing and which page we need to be on, so we have all the things that we need for that cue list. But we can go a step further. So say you want to automate this whole process. So when we get to the end of one cue list, we just want the next cue list and the right page to activate automatically, and we want Vista to do all the hard work for us. Well, we can do that. Vista has commands that we can insert that will trigger these snapshots for us. So what you want to do is in your first song, you want to go to the last cue, which is the preset cue that we built right at the beginning. You want to go to your timeline view, or at least I like to do this in my timeline view. Then hold down your yellow modifier key or your control key. Go to insert command. Then go to snapshot, where you can have all your snapshots available to you. We want to then go to our second song. So at the end of our first song, we want to trigger the snapshot for our second song. Hit insert. You'll see that it has inserted it here. We want to put this at the very end of this queue because there is a transition between Q6 into Q7. So we're quickly going to just drag that to the end, and then we're going to hit close, save and release. And now you simply just want to do this for every cue list. So go to the end of song 2, insert a command that jumps to snapshot 3. Drag that command to the end of our queue, hit close, save and release. Queue list 3, go to the end of queue list 3, insert a command that will activate queue list 4. We'll then put that at the very end of our queue, close, save and release, and queue list 4 will go to the end, insert a command that will activate queue list 5. Close, save and release. So now if we go back to our console, I'll quickly jump through song 1. So we're in song 1. We'll quickly go through the cues of song 1 until we get close to the end. Right, we're near the end now. We have a big blinder finish. Now we hit go to go into our preset, our transition state. And as you can see, automatically we have changed pages and song 2 has loaded in, because at the end of that cue list we have a command that triggers the snapshot for song 2. And then you simply just do this for all of your tracks. Get to the end of this song, and then song 3 triggers. Song 2 releases, we see no change on stage, but we know we're ready for song 3. Same again. Song 3 triggers song 4, so we're now on the right page for song 4, and we're in the right queue for song 4. So you can see that Vista can automate the whole process for us. Again, this is kind of a personal preference. If you don't want to be using your snapshot button to jump between songs, you can just have it automatically happen at the end of every track. This could be useful if you have kind of like a weekly thing where you already have all of your songs programmed and you want to rearrange those songs. The reason doing it this way is really useful is because, say, the order isn't going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe you want to change the order, and maybe song 4 isn't going to be played and we need to skip straight to 5 from 3. We can simply edit 3. If you go to that last cue, go to the timeline view, right click on that command, you can hit edit command, and from here we can now change it. Instead of jumping to song 4, it will jump to song 5 for us. So this is another nice way of automating the order of your cue lists, and then automating the reordering of those lists. So say every week you have different songs, simply edit the command at the end of every song to tell it which song it needs to load up next and which page it needs to load up next. Once you have these snapshots created, it's kind of up to you in which order you play them back, or which order you get the desk to play them back. The last thing I would do is perhaps create a quick picker that's docked somewhere useful that just has all of your songs ready to go. So for instance, say you're touring with a band and we start on song 1 and we get through the end, we get through song 1, but for some reason we're not going to play song 2 tonight, we're going to skip straight to 3. Instead of having to quickly change pages, all you do is hit song 3 here and you're ready to go for song 3. So at any time you can get to any song. So this is just another layer of safety. So you can jump to the beginning of any song at any time, and as you can see, it changes your page for you. So that's kind of it. That's kind of the way I would set up this style of programming and playing back. I know it's quite a long video and it's had quite a lot of components to it, but hopefully it's been useful. If you have any more questions about using snapshots or kind of this way of setting things up, leave a comment below or ask on the forum or ask on the Facebook page. And if there's any topics that I could cover in the future, let me know. I'll see you in the next video.